Margaret?
Margaret Turner, alternate.
Select board ex officio.
Catherine Brennan, member.
Mike Capel, member.
Rob Wilson, alternate.
Bill Spence, member.
Spence. Nathan Knight, member.
Morgan Dean, member.
Alan Burko, alternate.
Rick Smith, alternate.
Okay, so John is the only full member not here. I don't have his list though of who is the first person to.
Don't be matter.
Okay,
Doesn't
Doesn't matter?
I was last, so
Oh,
I
you
was
were
last meeting that I was.
Oh,
Rob
okay.
hasn't,
Eliminated me.
Rob hasn't done it in a while.
Yeah.
Rob.
Yeah.
He's right there.
Oh,
Right
sorry.
there.
Hello.
Captain, is that your? Yes.
Well, then I'd like to see Rob, for John. Proceed.
You can thank me later.
It was unanimous.
Your vote will mean something. All right, well, let's start with the minutes.
Alan, do you have something to share with us?
Yeah, I'm sorry.
That's
That was unintentional, I'm sorry.
the howling cat overture.
Does anybody need any extra time to look over it? Has everybody read them? Give us a minute.
I would just, on the 6th June one, on line 31. I may have said would, if I did, then we can keep it, but it should be could.
Okay.
This request could involve. I don't recall if I said could or would or should.
I don't either, but I'll go.
I meant
Sounds
could.
Yeah. Anyone else? All right, is there a motion to accept the minutes as amended? The sixth. Yeah.
Second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? No. Okay, so we've accepted the 6th. Any comments on the June 13th minutes?
I think you should turn it off.
Right. I'm not phone savvy, I need an 8.
The little button up here turns the sound down.
Fuck,
Just hold it down, it'll power on.
All right, anybody have any additions, comments? All right, do I hear a motion to accept the minutes? The June 13th minutes?
I move to accept the minutes from 13th as drafted.
All right,
Second.
okay, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Okay. So, they are accepted. Sorry. So I guess now we need Tara, because we're opening the public meeting that she was gonna lead us through on master plan amendments. Yes,
Do we have any privilege of the floor? No, we're not doing.
oh,
I just had one quick question
Sure.
to make sure, Tara, I don't think it, I think you were gonna send out a sample of the language for the steep slope zoning amendment. I don't remember seeing that. I might have it. I just
No, I
wanted-
wasn't. That's on my July list to send that to the Conservation Commission and the group that's gonna be looking at that, but still July.
Thank you, just checking.
all right, anyone else have any questions or open the privilege of the floor? Okay, all right, well, then, would you like to get started, Tara? Sorry,
So,
what-
you want to open the public hearing?
Yes, open the public hearing. I guess there's nobody here. So the public hearing is opened. Privilege of the floor has been opened. I think we're ready.
And there's no public there?
There's no public.
No.
No, that's easy.
There's
So
no
do-
public on Zoom either, so, I won't go into detail then. This is the amendment to, harvest some background language for the master plan on, the possibility that the resort is looking at for expanding their lease to include some workforce housing. And it would add, I don't know if I have screen sharing here. Yep. Because my copy is where I can screen share, I'll do that. So, and the proposal was adding two, modifying one recommendation in the action plan, because we kind of knew this might be coming when we wrote the master plan. So I wrote this kind of vaguely that said support creative solutions proposed by local business to the workforce housing shortage when consistent with the vision and goals. But now we feel we can go ahead and be a little more specific and say including but not limited to workforce housing that may be constructed through a long-term lease agreement on federal lands. And that will help when the Forest Service is reviewing this proposal by the resort, because they look for town support, even though the town has no official say in what happens on the federal land. They do look for town support when using this provision about the housing. So it'll be helpful to be able to point to this. And as a reminder, that the town has always considered the needs of the resort when doing infrastructure planning. It seemed like a good idea to articulate that as a specific action item, by adding this one on infrastructure coordination with the resort. So if there's no public, you could close the public hearing and discuss whether or not you want to vote on adopting this amendment. And my advice is just to attach it as an appendix, not pay me to reformat the whole plan.
Sounds like. a
Because
good idea.
that takes a
Good
long
idea.
time, and it would take a long time. Have to be proofread a couple times to make sure nothing, page breaks aren't messed up, and it's more involved than it might sound.
Well, it makes sense too, so we know what changes we've made over the next 10 years.
It's much easier to find as an appendix.
Yeah.
Right. And
So
I
can we-
mean, if
we're gonna close-
you get to a point where you have a whole bunch of them, then it makes sense to reformat the plan.
All right, any public have any comments before we close the public hearing? No? All right,
There's a ghost there.
so the public hearing is closed and the floor is open for the board. Ask Tara questions. Yes, Mike?
Does something attached as an appendix bear the same weight as something within the document itself?
Yes,
it's
it's officially part of the plan.
So it is, in this
Yeah.
case,
In this
Okay.
case, yes.
because I know it differs in different things.
In the appendix could be titled, changes for future insertion or something like that.
Well, I don't think you want to say that, because that could almost sound like you didn't adopt it yet. So we'll put out the adoption date right on the appendix.
Okay.
So I gathered everybody would prefer to do this then.
I mean, there's no further discussion.
No
We
further
should vote on
discussion,
it.
yes.
Nobody has any? Okay. Then, is there a motion to approve the amendment as presented.
I'll move to amend chapter 8 action plan. By adding the underlying text as presented to us in our information packet.
And so it's this, the first page is to an amendment to chapter 6.
And the amendment to chapter 6 as well.
And I've
Second.
that in
Is there-
appendix form.
In appendix form.
Perfect. Seconded, okay, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Good, it's passed, we've accepted it.
Thank you,
It's passed.
Sharon.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, now we're at, we call it old business, but the AARP age friendly community.
So we met with the town core working group. The last meeting was June 25th. And they were interested, but they wanted, they wanted to really just have time to delve into it a little bit. And so they're going to discuss it at the next meeting, which was supposed to be Tuesday, but now it's pushed to the 16th. Are you able to go to that? Because I am not.
Yes,
Okay, great. And so jump in if there's something that I left out. I did dig a little further too into the AARP program, and basically they do require that either a volunteer or a town staff member be the point person for this project. The application is pretty straightforward. It's, the demographics, the applicant needs to come up with, 250 to 300 word. They wrote that in their answers to 2 or 3 questions, write a 150 words about themselves, subscribe to a newsletter. There's training videos and information about the 8 domains of living. Transportation was a big issue in there that I dug into. So unless at the next meeting, somebody jumps in and says, oh, I want to take this on, it would then, I would assume, get kicked back to the planning board to see if anybody wants to take it on, or do we want to ask the town to take it on? So bottom line, the 16th, we'll get more information from the town core working group.
I have a question. I read it and I've done a lot of research also. Other than having it, hey, we did it.
Mhm.
What is the real benefit to the town?
It's
Good
marketing.
question.
It's marketing. It's you're getting the name out there. You're anybody that's, marketing is number one, because you're going to get a national, whoever's an AARP member. The other benefit is the action plans of making Waterville a little more, are we ADA compliant and everything? A lot of what I was reading, we already do, or are in the process of doing. So I felt like, okay, well, that's good. I mean, we're on the right track here as far as, what this program would be about. But those are really the 2 takeaways that I had. It's not just for people that are, retired either. It's, I guess it's a lifestyle.
So this is additional publicity for Waterville.
Yep.
But put us on the map with respect to the AARP.
Yeah, and there's a group of, I want to say it's 11 towns in New Hampshire that are already a part of this program. There's a couple in Maine, and I have the exact numbers too. So it is happening in New Hampshire and, and a little bit in Maine. So it just depends on if someone wants to dig their teeth in and wanted to do it.
Take it on as a project.
Yeah. And just keep things moving forward.
yeah.
In your
Yes, we'll see.
research, have you been able to determine where in a particular town this project is usually managed from? Pardon the hanging.
The current,
Dangling participle?
I did not look into the individual towns that are already members in our area as far as, is it a volunteer or a town employee in that
Right.
particular town? So no, I have not looked into how other towns have chosen to do that.
Incorporated into.
Yeah,
Their
obviously
planning
we
and
would want to
so on.
volunteer first, and then we would need, that. I think people need to, the town core working group just wanted to do a little more research for themselves to see what, what it involved. That's the impression I got.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I mean, I presume what they do, things they recommend be done, a lot of it is planning board, some of it may be select board.
Yeah, I would think so. Like I said, I didn't go into delve in deep as to what the program is, what these 8 domains of living, other than I know transportation was a big one. We go back and take
That
a
gets to
note
our
here.
pedestrian study.
Yeah, I mean, really, I
Yeah.
felt like a lot was, okay. This livability index, they look at a bunch of different aspects of what affects people's quality of life. These are on my notes to make it an age-friendly community. Tamsworth, as you mentioned, they're a member, they're a bigger town. Let's see. In 2018, there were 11 New Hampshire towns, 1 Maine town, and it's called the White Mountain Age-Friendly Community. Services, activities, health services, air and water quality, they look at a lot of things that affect people's lives. Housing was one of them, open space, just going back and looking at my notes.
So this can cross a lot of different.
Oh, yeah, but I really did feel like
We got a lot of it.
we're on the right.
We're
I mean,
there.
I feel like this wasn't, we're not starting at ground zero,
Right.
a lot of this is we move forward, so,
Mother got an apple pie and we already do it.
so.
Okay, publicity would be good.
So we'll get back to you. I guess we can keep that on the agenda then for old business for next planning board meeting.
Great, thank you.
Yeah. All right, and then pedestrian.
Yes,
So
and
the
I'm-
pedestrian, again, the town core working group felt like everybody wanted to review it again. Just to kind of look at it and see what it entailed. There was not an appetite for redoing the pedestrian study, spending the whatever it was, 90,000, yeah.
10 years ago.
Right.
That's
While the pedestrian study definitely is outdated as far as numbers and costs, it was pre-COVID. Again, we have done a lot on the pedestrian study and/or are in the process of doing it. So I think people felt like they wanted to kind of comb through it a little more and see if there were pieces that we could still work on. For example, biking on that one of the recommendations was biking on some of the trolleys, being able to put people's bikes, just little things like that they recommended if there was a interest in that. What else we discussed is potentially though redoing the survey. That could be a lot less expensive. The survey, the study is 10 years old, the attitudes, the population of Waterville has changed so much. That might be something to look at, and it would be a lot less expensive. And just to see, maybe kind of using the study's template of their survey questions again as a template. But again, people wanted to delve into it, review it a little bit, so we would have more information, I guess, on.
When I reviewed it all, one of the things that I felt was sort of missing, and I think is missing within the town, is we have like 710, more or less,
Mhm.
more or less 710 residents. What I don't know whether it's available, and I've been kind of told it's not, is that by demographics. What percentage are me? 65 and over, or 50 and older, whatever.
Yeah.
What,
Well, that's what the study,
Survey.
the survey had that in there.
Yeah, I
So,
have
no,
the,
yeah, but it's very outdated. So that would be one of the questions that I think would be interesting. Again, though, with surveys, it's who's responding.
yeah,
Are you getting? So you have to kind of take that into, how much we would get back when you're looking at that data, when it does, a survey comes back as far as, okay, so we're 700. We get a response of 450, maybe. Who are those 450? Is that represent,
we had that problem with the census,
yeah.
Mhm.
right?
Perennial problem.
but it was the same issue back in 2015, is that the survey that they did that you're basing decisions on, or at least, it is also had that, issue to that bias too.
Yeah. I'm
Just a quick question. So I looked at this again this morning at like 4 o'clock when I couldn't sleep, and so I might not have
The range,
retained everything that I got. The survey was just of residents.
I believe, I
I
don't
remember.
know, I would have to go back and look and see,
I think so, because it's.
it had to
You're
have
right,
either been
because-
resident, yeah, it was like 250 or so, let me say.
So
You know, or versus people that are voters, you know, like that are,
property owners.
yeah,
So
well,
I
or
guess
that are
my
registered
point is we have a
full-time.
constituent population that's not certainly much bigger than just the
Yes, and
residents, right?
different, yeah.
Right.
And so their needs, if they're
Try to
a
capture
ski
them.
family only and their place sits empty in the summertime versus
My
people who
neighbors.
might come here all year round, but are only here on weekends or whatever is maybe far different than mine because I live here year round or
Right.
whatever.
I mean,
So-
my personal opinion is I would love to see an updated survey.
I think we can act,
If,
open it
depending
up,
on the
yeah.
cost, but
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
but, you know, again, we'll see what the group comes back at.
I went through it pretty like with a fine tooth comb. And one thing that stuck out to me was that this is a direct quote, half of recent sales have been influenced in some way by BBTS. So if that's where like, if that's what they're talking about with this engagement and opportunity in that section, that can't be true
True.
anymore.
Correct. Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah, and you know, many condos make entry into the real estate market easier. Relatively low price of real estate compared to other mountain resorts. Like that can't be.
Well, when I
That's
went and looked
true,
at
but-
what they were comparing, what towns they looked at, and I think it's the last appendix in the study. The towns, with maybe the exception of one, were so much bigger
Yeah.
than Waterville. They were just, then in 2015. So that's why you got it, like the numbers, the costs, that whole thing, everything, a lot of it is, that part is outdated. Reference to the gondola, they talk about Breckenridge. Okay, is a really big town to
Very
another
different.
big, you know, relative to Waterville, size, and it was free back then. I don't know if the gondola is free in Breckenridge now or not, but so because they were talking about transportation and things that we could do to improve transportation. So, yes. It is outdated, all, and was so affected by COVID too. That's why I do think, you know, again, a survey might be interesting. but
Yeah, I think that's a great place to start.
If it's less, you know, I have no concept of how much
Well,
the
we have
cost
to go
is.
back, because you're absolutely right. There's approximately 1,400 residential units, that about right? Approximately 1,400 residential units in water.
Mhm.
Okay,
Go
big, huh?
ahead, I'm listening.
But if we assume, for yucks and giggles, that there's an average of 3 people, just because I can divide that way. If you assume there's an average of 3 people per unit, whatever. That would mean out of 710, you have approximately 260, 270 of those units that are residents. And 1,150 or so, round math, that aren't. And I think it's really important, as you indicate, that we make sure that we recognize those people. There are more of them than there are of us.
The community surveys did include non-residents. I just looked at.
Yeah, I know. And I think that we really have to, look, everybody knows where I live, right? You all know I live in Green Peak. There are gonna be 24 units there. Of those 24, how many are residents? One,
Yeah.
Is that Sunnyside too?
huh?
That where I live, there's 20 units and we're the only ones that live year round.
I mean, but these are brand new that just
Mhm.
built. At, you know, $1 million a piece.
Well, the same fact was illustrated. In fact, I think the data that's in the workforce housing study is more relevant to what
Yeah.
we're discussing. They said the workforce housing study gave us those numbers, which indicate that well over 70% of the residents of the residential properties are vacant.
So that's about the
They said
percentage
less than
that-
100 units in town were actually occupied by permanent residents.
Yes.
That doesn't Like
but
that,
you know,
no, exactly right.
Information.
That sounded a little exaggerated to me,
Yeah,
but nevertheless,
didn't
the
it?
point is still there.
But this
That
comes
agree-
back to, if we're gonna do a survey. All right, we have to figure out, and I think it's you know, I don't know who's responsible for it, I nominate Nancy,
Very funny.
but no, I'll be happy to be involved. We have to figure out, who are we going to survey? Who do we want to capture? And what I don't know, and I'm looking at the town.
Hmm.
Theoretically, the town has addresses or telephone numbers or emails.
We only have mailing addresses. We don't have a
Property.
So you have,
I mean, we have some people's phone numbers, but we don't have a big database of phone numbers and
Yeah.
emails, no. The only thing that we can generate, we have a mailing address for every single person.
But anything we do here, shouldn't we, who we're surveying is taxpayers. If you pay taxes in this town,
That's
then
the
you're
point.
part of this, you're part of this survey.
Obviously, we have.
So, because you're being affected by what
I
happens.
agree with that.
That's. who
Right,
we
you could put a little insert in the tax bill. That's.
Yeah.
You can put it in.
Not the
water
tax bill.
Sewer bill.
And not tax,
can't put it in
Okay.
tax.
only
But-
the tax bill.
An
Got
insert
it.
can go in,
Okay.
the water sewer.
So to answer your question, I think that the answer, or we'll see how the group feels, but what we should be doing is focusing on servicing the taxpayer.
Stakeholder, yes.
As the universe of people we wanna survey.
Yes,
We may wanna relook at that workforce housing survey. I mean, there may be up-to-date information there that we can
It
take for this effort as well, before commissioning a survey.
Well, again, though, and full disclosure, I have not finished reading the workforce study. I
It's really
do question that, that's from, you know, the 2020 census is what they used, and they had 500 people in there. Is that too old too? Again, it's pre-code, you know, even though the survey's dated 2023. So the housing, you know, I mean, yes, we should look at it, you're right.
But it's just
I
newer.
will,
It may
so,
still be
Yeah.
out of date by several years, but it's newer.
and the focus was entirely different, but nevertheless, some data was there that I found
Absolutely.
very interesting. That's
Absolutely.
just how many residences, how many buildings where people could live are not occupied,
Are not occupied by
full
residents.
time, that's right, not full time, that
Well,
they are only
the-
periodically.
Yeah, this is where it gets complicated too, because we have full-time residents, 700 plus. But how many of those full-time residents are actually here the majority of the year?
So
Right.
can I make a suggestion on a survey?
Yeah,
Sure.
go ahead.
So what we'd normally do for something like a master plan survey is send it to voters and property owners,
Mhm.
and to ask on the survey kind of which they are, so that you can make any comparisons, because somebody that's a resident of the town and votes there, we would normally give them as much say as a non-resident property owner. And for any zoning changes, that's also your population. And so I think, how we've been doing surveys in recent years that work pretty well and keeps the cost down is to make a SurveyMonkey link and send out a postcard to all those addresses with the link. Usually welcome people to come get a paper copy if they want to, or ask to have one mailed, and you won't have many takers on that. It doesn't end up being burdensome to the town. So that's kind of today's way of doing a survey at a lot lower budget, because there's nobody having to do data entry for you. SurveyMonkey can produce the graphs and tables with the results, so it really does keep the cost down. I have a company in Littleton do mass mailings for these that it's really affordable.
And again, just to be clear to the town core working group, so they were gonna relook at the pedestrian study again, and also they were kind of tasked to what questions do we want to ask? So they may come back with their ideas of where do we want to focus in and bring it back. So that was, I kind of got that impression too from the group.
Can I just
Yeah.
ask, maybe it's two things, I guess, so I get both in. We pulled in action items into the master plan that were related to the pedestrian study, right?
Yes,
All of them? Or like, if you think about the things that were action, the sort of recommendations, I guess, and the things that we should do to improve on the things that they found in this particular study. I'm kind of curious, but I think a lot of them are done, like,
Yes.
so that's my first bit, but it would be good to, I feel like, evaluate whether or not we either missed the mark or, and that's part of the survey, or we didn't do something at all because we just didn't like the, that I think you mentioned the bicycle on the bus. I'd argue, where are you gonna take them? It's not like you're taking them to Boston
Right.
and they get off the bus in Boston and ride their bike around down there and then come back. It's a 1 mile square town, like where are we, like, so from my perspective, that particular item didn't make sense to me.
You just get on your bike at home.
4 o'clock this
Right.
morning, yeah, it's sitting in my garage, if I wanna bike somewhere, I just get on it and I go there. That's, sorry, that little sidebar.
Well, But for future development, should the resort want to increase mountain biking on the resort? I mean, again, down, who knows, but then somebody from town would want to put their bikes on the trolley and head on up there. And that's, I think, where they were kind of
Go right
going
to the
with that.
trailhead.
Yeah,
Right
to
out.
go to the
Till the
trailhead
gondola's working.
versus,
Yeah.
or they're in here and they want to go out to Livermore. They want to go to Livermore, but they don't want to go, if they're.
But on that point,
saying.
it's really nice, because I'm too old for mountain biking and prepping and whatever. But younger friends of mine that go mountain biking, it's really nice that on the Snows Mountain chairlift, they can take their bikes up to the
Upper Snows
Upper
Mountain.
Stowe Mountain, which leads to all kinds of
Yeah.
Mhm.
really nice hiking mountain.
That's probably the
biking.
most popular
Yeah.
process,
Yeah.
especially for
That's
tourists.
big
I think
benefit.
Never ridden a bicycle.
Yeah, exactly, especially for
That ties
tourists.
Yeah,
into an
right.
Asian
So my-
community as
and
well.
that's-
You get to do the
I
fun
didn't mean
part.
to get us off on
But,
that.
No, but I'm just saying that if it's really, when you talk about that, kudos to the resort that runs that, right, for making that option available.
Yeah.
So, this sort of leads into my part 2, which was, if we're gonna do a survey, I think one of the things I found at my company years ago was that sometimes you have to remind people that you've taken steps to address the things that we found in some kind of a study somewhere. How do we make this Waterville Valley a better place to live or visit or whatever? And so, the things that have been done, like, we want to improve our brand and what Waterville Valley is all about. We have a wonderful sign we spent a lot of money on.
Mhm.
That sort of encapsulates that for me in terms of what can you do here? And it's not just the ski resort, it's all these other things too. Ski resort's obviously a huge part of it. And what they have to offer, the Snow Mountain Chairlift for bicycles, whatever.
Just pointing.
But let's remind, as we do this, we gotta, I think, remind people like of all the things that have been done.
Yeah.
And maybe some of the things that maybe we haven't gotten to, but are still up for consideration in this particular, for action items in this particular study. So when they frame their responses to the survey, they kind of have it in their head, like, hey, we've been doing these things. That really made it for me, or, you know what, that sign we spent a lot of money on was, for me, didn't do anything at all. Okay, well, you live here, you already know all that stuff. If you were somebody who's driving up here for the first time and you see that, you'd be like, wow, there's a lot to do here. Like, I didn't realize I was coming to ski, but there's, there's other
see,
fine things you do.
What's interesting, when I talk to Tim and other people, how many people at that, just take the left at that sign? All right, and what percentage, and it's a huge percentage, just take that left, go up to the mountain, and as Tim will tell you, there are a whole bunch, as we know, there's a whole bunch of people that really don't even know we
That there's a town here.
exist.
Yeah.
All right, they just,
Are you talking before or after that sign was put up?
I think it's both. Cause I got he told me when I spoke to him about a month ago about it, the percentage that just goes straight up to the mountain.
Yeah, he talked about that last night.
night
Some
he said
employees
it's
don't
still-
even.
Some, yeah.
Or visitors from
It's
the local area.
amazing, it's
Yeah,
an
it's still an
amazing
issue.
number that
Yeah.
take that left and just drive up to the parking lots up there. One of the purposes theoretically of the gondola is to get more and more people actually coming here, not here obviously, but and then taking the gondola up instead of driving up to the parking lots and all the rest of that, but I mean, that's
Well,
maybe in my lifetime, but I doubt it, but.
but there is that
Hmm.
sign coming down that says all the different things that's kind of outdated maybe, but,
that's-
Well, it's right over here.
It's
yeah,
been
off
re-
of, what is that,
done.
triple, coming down, so do you, I mean, since we're talking about signing or whatever, do you move that or whatever to let people know that there is the town over there, because of that one sign has like everything listed.
Right.
Of all the different things, it's got the ice arena, it's got all that kind of
Yeah.
stuff there, so, and that's been there for years and years. But,
And we should make a better one.
That isn't ours.
or put it
Is
in a
it
different
towns?
place.
It's not the town.
Why?
Yeah.
All the towns, what it is.
Right.
Well, just, or it needs to be updated, but I don't know, whatever,
But
I mean.
we obviously see, the question is, how important is having people recognize that you don't just take that left, you come in here
Mhm.
and you go to the restaurants, you go to Wendy's stores, you go to Jugtown and go whatever. How important is that? All right, and that's an interesting
This sounds
question.
like a familiar.
So
Mara,
that's
you
like a
probably
business
remember-
survey.
I
Because
remember in
somebody
the
said-
select board, I mean, about a sign, remember when the resort put their sign up and said Waterville Valley Ski Area this way? And there was some discussion about how we needed something to point out, well, there are other things this way, going straight, but we never followed up on it, or the Forest Service, wouldn't let us do it. I don't remember either, but we've had this discussion about putting something down on 49
Mhm.
Yeah,
that points that there are other attractions and restaurants, what have you,
Yeah,
if you go
strategically-
straight.
Strategically, that makes more sense.
Right.
Yeah, so.
I mean, I remember specifically Sandy Larson getting up and saying, there are too many signs, they're all confusing, they don't look alike. And that's one thing that was in this study, but we've changed, the town core working group has done a good job with signage.
Right.
We have the new sign. I think that like with this study, if this is what really guides us, and the things that we work toward, maybe we do need to update it. I know it's a huge expense and a lot of time, but like if this is the guiding document, none of it is really up to date anymore.
right.
It knows that there's like 31.5 acres still undeveloped. I don't think that's accurate anymore.
No.
None of the
Right.
numbers are accurate,
No.
it is
Yeah,
very
And we
outdated.
have, like, to Rick's point, like we have done a lot of things in here, like
Yeah.
better lighting on trails for pedestrians. Check
Done.
on the valley trails,
It's
right?
been our checklist in the select board for
Updated
many
mapping and
years.
scheduled stops.
Okay, so
Yeah.
the point is
Yeah.
that
But-
this,
Yeah.
the
Update
survey,
path.
the pedestrian survey, although it's 10 years old, was a very useful document.
Yeah.
Still is, I mean, we're still using it on the select board
Okay,
for,
and so the,
Yeah.
for roads and.
what Morgan is
Such-
suggesting is, having been such a useful document, it may be useful and say a good expenditure of funds to do it again.
Well, it may be more
Not yet.
useful to have a small group get together and determine what needs to be, if anything needs to be updated.
Well, that's what the town core working group was doing.
Yeah,
So I
Okay.
think that that's
Yeah.
what they're doing, because I just don't think there's an appetite for $90,000 or whatever it would be now, over $100,000. Cause this year, the next couple years, because we're still in the middle of a lot of these great projects that are multi-year projects that we're paying for, so. We're working through it, and not to say in 3 or 4 years, that might not be something to relook at
Mhm.
again,
No.
but.
and the
The idea,
update,
though,
In
is
the
to
future, let's just.
try to
button it
update the
up and
data is
see
what I mean.
well, update, I would say, not only just update what's in there, but by update, I think we all mean. What's new that we wanna put in
Yeah.
there that,
Get some fresh ideas. That's what I
yeah,
think.
that wasn't considered back then.
Right.
For whatever reason, or
Yeah.
because conditions have changed, so do we wanna do something?
Having the
In addition-
hasn't the resident number almost tripled?
I'm sorry, what number?
The
resident.
number
Over
of,
10
re-
years?
forget stakeholders.
Over 10 years? No, I don't think triple,
Not triple.
probably almost
Double.
double,
Double.
maybe a better way
Yeah,
of
when
putting it.
so we
Well
moved
done.
back when my daughter was 1 in 2013, and it was around 258, something like that, and now we're at over 710.
Yeah,
So more than double.
yeah, I mean, but it's a big dump, we'll call it double, triple, someone,
Who cares?
whatever.
Yeah, a lot.
When we're looking at, when you compare where we were 15 years ago, 14 years ago, whatever it was, 10 years ago, we are not really the same town.
No.
When you look at the buildings that have gone up in that period of time.
Hmm.
And you look at the homes, homes that have gone up, you look at the townhouses and condominiums that have gone up. It is significantly different from what it was 10 years ago.
Well, and one of the
I'm not saying better or worse,
No.
I'm just saying different.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I think that's Catherine's point, is that we understand, like, that they're working on it and they know that it's out of date and we're working and in the middle of things.
What would the planning board, is there anything we'd like to tell the town core working group?
I
At
think
this
the
point,
survey is
as
a
they're
great
working
idea.
on it? We mentioned the survey as a,
Because that is one of the
Possibility.
recommendation is to keep asking, one of my
Yeah.
notes was keep asking what people want, like
Right.
keep doing that to,
Yeah.
because things change, demographics change, everything, so
Yeah.
what is
So
it?
that's a source for ideas.
Yeah, it's a great way to engage the community too and let them have a
Yeah.
say, and I think
Well-
Rick's point is really important, we need to show what we have
So
done.
the
Like an article in
survey
the paper.
survey is going to be recommendations from the core working group to the planning board as to how we get a survey out sometime this year.
Well, that's what we're asking if, I mean, again, unless, I don't know how that works, but we left it with the town core working group is that was an option. Now, when we go back on the 60, we can say we would really like to, that's our recommendation to do the survey to see if they want to take it on. So,
or does the, or just.
or does it get kicked back?
Is
I
it
mean,
with
I'm
the
not
planning
sure
board
what
do it?
how
I think we
that
just look at,
works.
well, I think we don't worry so much about who does what right away, but what is it we wanna do?
Right.
And then figure out who's gonna do it.
Do it, right.
Yeah, so the overall goal would be to have a more accurate picture of current Waterville Valley residents and the services we have here.
Not not residents.
Oh, taxpayers.
Yes,
Voters and property owners.
There you go.
Voters and.
I keep
Right.
using the word stakeholders, but yes.
And I think the update, I mean, when you look at this, the chart behind you. I mean, do we want to include in it? I mean, there is further development coming. It may be beyond our lifetimes, at least some of us, but it's certainly in the conceptual stage. So how is that going to impact? I think we want to be forward looking
Yeah,
in that regard. If a company plans to put in, 2 new hotels and a new conference center, the gondola, mixed units. I think as far as I understand the current concept plan, there are no plans at this time to build any more multi-unit family housing or whatever our specific
Yeah, but
phrase
there
is.
was planned to build an apartment building.
Well, for an apartment building, that's another part of it I mean, we have to be careful with the terms, workforce housing,
Yeah,
affordable housing, staff housing. That was part of it, but mixed condominiums as well, with retail stores at the bottom
Mhm.
and condominiums above. That's all part of all these things are being talked about. And that apartment, maybe as many as 2.
Mhm.
One on Forest Service land, one within the town core itself.
But
So-
that was also too at market rate. That
Yeah.
wasn't.
Right, but what I'm saying is, whatever it turns out to be, I mean, we have an idea of what plans are being seriously thought about. I mean, money has been spent to put these plans together, so a pedestrian study should look into incorporating as much as we feel we should
I think
incorporate.
that's a really good point. It almost denotes, we have to think, about a conceptual. I think that's good for the planning board. If we're sending out a survey, it's gonna be people at a point in time. So I don't think that our next survey should be on this plan that probably nobody has any
Oh, no,
idea
no.
of
No,
any
I
of it,
agree. I
because,
agree.
you walk around the town, you say, oh, yeah, there's gonna be, a gondola. Oh, yeah, they were saying that since 71, that type of stuff. But maybe part of, our recommendation back is let's set a schedule for resurveying. Like, is it every 5 years or something, so we can have these points in time. Not to say we redo studies and invest in that, but at least as the towns evolving.
yeah, it's a great idea. 'Cause
Every
you capture-
5 years.
Yeah, you capture so many people. Waterville by nature is a transient community. There are people that come and go all the time. So to have those snapshots every 5 years and how people are feeling about things too, I think that's really a great idea.
Noted.
until we have flying cars, we probably don't really need to redo the study. My perspective is, people walk, they ride bicycles, they have to drive and park their car somewhere. That's not gonna change, that stuff is not gonna change.
Yeah.
What might change is that where they walk and how they get to different places they're gonna be, a gondola or whatever is what's gonna change, and we can see how people feel about that stuff. That's, I think, maybe I'm just piggybacking on you, Rob. but
No.
it's,
I think you should get up at 4 a.m. more often.
No. I did think it was interesting that maybe 3 or 4 of the top things that people were concerned about. We may lose some of that, and so that's, I think, feedback for everyone as we think about the plans that are evolving for the development of the rest of the property here in the valley. Green space was on the top of the list, I think, or number 2 or 3. Anyway, we're probably gonna lose most of that.
Yeah.
And so what is, I mean, in the town core, we have a ton of green space,
Yeah.
everywhere else. And so how do we connect people to the green space that we have?
Not just green space,
Yeah.
but trees. 'Cause every time there's a development, the first thing that happens, all the trees get cut down.
Well,
No.
because they put a
Can
building.
you
there.
chain yourself into a building?
Yeah, I'm gonna hug the tree.
Daryl,
We are surrounded by hundreds of thousands of acres of.
Yes.
Yeah, but
But they're not here, we don't look at them.
Not everyone takes advantage of getting out amongst the trees. What they might want to do is come here to Waterville Valley, stay in one of our lodging places, and then sit in the town square or at the pond and look at the mountains from down here.
It's beautiful.
And I just want to make sure that as we think about how this all comes together, that we're accommodating for those.
Well, what's amazing is the number of people that stop right in front of our house and just take a picture right down
of Osceola.
Oh, Osceola, yeah.
of Osceola and.
Which is not in Waterville.
Not of your house?
What? Well, a few people take it up the house because of the gorgeous flowers that my wife takes care of.
Until we destroyed them,
Till
until the town destroyed them.
Till the town destroyed them. But they take a picture of that, they go over and take pictures. Number of people that stop on the bridge and take a picture looking down at the village and the mountains behind it.
It's beautiful.
We see these things all the
Yeah,
time.
well, one of
We take
the
it for
things
granted.
on the Vola path rebuild is to put in some kind of, little knockout so people can actually pull over,
Oh, yeah.
stop their car.
Like they are on the Kank.
Yeah, something like that. So I mean, and we're thinking of those sorts of things, but
The scenic vista on the Kank.
the general development principle has been to intensively develop the town core. And then we have everything, and the idea is to link that town core to, with the trails and everything. So I don't want to be seen as a tree killer, but the idea is to build something like that was always there, right? To build something like what's in the conceptual plan, and I think our job is we've looked at it certainly on the select board and the town core working group is how do we connect everything with the trail signs we put up and improvements in trails and the lightings on trails, the idea to get people to realize
I'll speak to
To
that
go out.
in a few minutes
All right.
when we get down to town. That's
Yeah.
exciting news.
what we're trying to avoid obviously is, the type of building you see where there are no trees, right? It just looks like a suburban or a urban landscape. And I would advise, and I actually talked to someone the fabulous Tina,
Absolutely.
or is it Magnificent? Which one is it today?
Both.
Both today. Oh, she's gonna both today. Go stand on the road, Devereaux Way, between the two developments. I would just leave it at that, and what your impression would be, I think.
Could be anywhere USA.
It's like Peabody, Mass. No offense to anybody if they're from PBD.
It's nice town. I mean, it looks like if you had Studebakers in the driveways and it looks like, some 1950s postcard of, 12 houses, 12 units on one side and 12 on the other, a street in the
Yes.
middle, and
Cul-de-sac.
waiting for the kids on the bikes and the tricycles and, yeah, there's nothing else there. I mean, and they're green lawns, I mean, so.
Yeah, I understand all that, but the point, many people have said, or this
Mhm.
chatting around town. Why do we want to live in Waterville Valley? Why do people come up here? It's for this environment. So to develop property in such a way that it looks like any suburban in anywhere USA defeats the purpose.
Yeah.
That's the point.
Well, and that's what we want to avoid,
Yeah.
and that gets to the one big developable parcel left.
Yes.
That is true.
C1, right, and
Behind us or wherever,
yeah,
that, I don't know how many acres that is. Maybe you do.
How many acres, what is?
In C1.
Yeah, how many?
the whole thing is like 30.
I think, when you talk
Something
about
acres.
how many acres are left,
Other places.
Oh, how many acres are left? It's 7. He said 30 last night, but I think he was talking about the
The
whole,
whole, the whole
The-
concept of the town.
that
yeah, but
conceptual plan.
there's at least 15 or 18.
Yeah, I was gonna say 17 struck me as the number, something in there,
Of
17
acres that are,
Right, where the parking lots are, where,
where all of that
Greenpeace is.
development in the middle
Skate
is.
park used to be.
Right.
yeah,
That's really all that's left, and it is privately owned. And the way it is currently zoned, they can do almost anything
well, except single family homes.
except single family.
But they can continue to build, say, what they're building now is multi-unit family.
Yeah.
Yeah, and threes, I mean, I think 9 is the,
Well, we had this discussion once before about whether or not we wanted an amendment to the ordinances to say that in C1 can no longer build residential property.
Or purely residential property. is what we
That's
meant.
okay, that's
Right.
my
'Cause
phrase.
we wanted
Right.
that living
Okay,
space.
I'll add your
I-
adjective
I-
purely, but
yeah.
residential properties was the term.
I know we decided not to look at it last year, but Tara, do you remember, is that on our list for our discussion of possible zoning amendments? This fall to relook at the what's allowed permitted in C1?
Not on my list. I think there has been some interest on the board to continue talking about it. We
Okay,
dropped it as part of the housing opportunity program amendments because the landowner expressed that they wouldn't be able to get a developer to build something if it had that kind of restriction on it. So
Yeah, I think
But-
Ray could talk to.
Ray,
Sent us an
Ray,
email about it.
yeah,
well, Ray has been a big proponent of removing multi-unit family housing from C1. But I can certainly understand the owner's concern. I mean, if you own the property, you wanna keep all your options available
Yep.
to you. So we
yeah,
would
I mean, as a planner, and Kayla and I were both supporting considering not allowing residential on the ground floor
Yeah.
Right, that's
Right.
what I thought, the conversation.
because
Okay.
that would be most supportive of having a vibrant downtown.
Right, right.
Have people, could we craft something to that effect, or I mean, I don't know, again, how the property owner would feel about that, if that's too restrictive, but something where, yeah, you can have the retail space below, but then it's more, or smaller condos above, or
Mixed,
whatever,
Mixed use, I
mixed
think
use or
we
something
could
like
probably
that. Is that
leave that
something
open
that
in
would
the
increase the
marketplace.
tax base? Would that be, I mean, I don't know. Is that too restrictive?
no, I think that's where we were thinking of going, but we
and that's what they were
shelved it.
thinking of going to too. I mean, but, as anybody that was there last night. Fortunately or unfortunately, we're going right down the middle of that plan is the gondola.
Hmm.
And that you know, a vast majority of that side is not going to be built or whatever unless or until said gondola comes to fruition. And
So it's at least approved.
yeah, and that's
If it's approved, then somebody would say, okay, if you're gonna build a gondola, then all right, I
the
will
gondola has to go,
finance the big hotel.
from being a line on the thing
Yeah.
to actually being approved, everything in place, contract signed, blah, blah, blah,
It
blah.
has been accepted by the, as I recall. It's
Yes,
been-
it-
The plan has been
But it
accepted,
got a long
but they're
way.
waiting for the approval.
Yes.
And that's gonna take
Years.
a number of years.
Did you know we had links up there? I didn't know that.
That's a controversial topic, I think.
I didn't know we had them.
They are required
no, I-
but I don't, there's a real question whether there are links, but you know. The people who own the forest say you have to do this.
People own-
Mitigation
you
for-
own the forest.
No, well, yeah, maybe one tree out of 700. Yeah, its own community, which means nobody owns it. No, but yeah, so that it has to be mitigated.
I
because
didn't
it's
know
declared,
that. I was
but
there.
there is an issue.
Yeah.
Whether there actually are,
I understand that.
but you
You
know,
have to do a survey.
Yeah. Well, but let's go back. Do we want to truly charge the core working group and say, we think we need a survey. Do you want to have it, or should we form a new working group to come up with said survey? Or we do want to do that right now?
I think we can ask them it's on the 16th, it's next Tuesday.
and
Yeah, I
what
think-
all the things they want to do, and then out of that, do we turn that over to somebody? To include the survey, to include relooking at the pedestrian study for any potential updates or changes?
Yeah.
And then, yeah, we figure all that out, and then we figure out, yeah, who gets the,
Okay,
who gets
let's ask them.
the job to do it.
Right. Thank you.
If I could, if I could show, the screen for a minute, that question about restricting the residential in C1 got the strongest support from voters in the survey we did as part of that project. But it was more than, we asked more about not just restricting it on the ground floor, but also having it only be year-round dwelling units. And that may have been a big part of what the landowner was responding to. Maybe if it was just not allowing residential on the ground floor, which is a different question than how do we make more affordable housing, maybe they would be more comfortable with that. So I thought it was worth revisiting that alone, just not allowing residential on the ground floor.
Yeah.
I agree. I would support revisiting that. How does everybody else feel?
Oh, yeah,
I don't know.
I mean, Margaret, why don't you just, I mean, did people read
I
it?
just-
Yeah.
I don't know how people read this, but I think what it's saying as I read it right now is they don't want a hotel. It's okay if you have dwelling units above there, but we don't want you to build a big hotel there.
Wow.
It could be read that way, so maybe it's an unclear what the.
And you know, it's only 50%. It was the most, but it's not a.
Yeah, see, that's not how I'd read it. I'd read it as, do you want like Airbnbs or
Yeah.
timeshares, not hotel or timeshares.
Residential.
I wouldn't read hotel. at
Dwelling
commercial
units
districts.
excludes hotels.
As a survey question.
Yeah, but I wouldn't have read it with that intent.
No.
Like, I just don't feel like that even talks about hotels. Like that has nothing to do with a hotel.
Right.
We would need to
Dwelling
read.
units on hotels, but.
Yeah.
But I think, I mean, I'd encourage you to continue talking about the possibility of a zoning amendment that. I mean, it's the C1, it's a commercial district.
Yeah,
Yeah, it seems like a no-brainer to me, but.
Do we want to put it on our list to
Yeah.
discuss?
we
or
should.
continue
I
to
think it's
discuss?
still very relevant.
I think,
Right.
you know.
How
if they-
big's that
if they
list?
say you can't put commercial in our commercial district, then they're not the right developer. I mean, I think like, as a planning board, we have to decide. Do we want commercial in our commercial district? Because otherwise we're not gonna have any.
Well,
Yeah.
there's some sympathy for that too.
Yeah. Okay.
I think you need a receipt. So, Tara, how's our list looking for possible zoning amendments for next town meeting? We add this one to it. I think we were gonna start looking at these in next month, was it?
Yeah, I don't have the action plan in front of me, sorry. We
I
were
think-
talking about steep slopes, floodplains and shoreline, I think, but I don't have that list in front of me.
All right, well, yeah, let's just stick it on it and discuss it. There's no harm in discussing.
I'll make a better list. How's that? We have it next time.
As a point of order, I'd like to see Margaret for John,
Okay.
since Rob is left.
Okay.
Well, okay, Margaret for Rob, who is
For John.
for John. Thank you. So sorry to interrupt.
So you think we'll hear back from the town core working group by our August meeting?
I won't be there. It's, they're meeting on the 16th, so
Yeah.
Nancy said she'll.
Oh,
be-
July, yeah.
Yeah, I
Next-
will
next
convey the answers to you because I won't be here in August, but
Okay.
yeah, we'll talk.
Right, but we will know what they think at our August.
Yeah.
Meeting, what they support.
All right.
And I'm sort of in the same vein, but changing subjects. Dark sky.
Oh, not
Also,
that,
when you're
please.
done, I have I have lighting update on town core group too.
Okay.
Yeah,
so-
I mean, all right, so should we move to, well, is there any correspondence? No. All right, so should we move to the committee reports then and?
Dark sky.
Dark sky- Dark sky- It's part of town core, I think, but go ahead.
Okay, so Megan spoke about the lighting, they're gonna do some, they're testing solar, jump in here too, some solar lights at the transfer stations. They're all dark sky compliant. And then, you know, depending on how that goes, maybe we could look at using them into town. They would have motion detectors on them. You know, with a long-term objective, depending on how the responses and how they work, would be eventually you could, if they're completely solar, you would kind of work your way out of using the co-op because, you know,
Yeah.
you wouldn't need to. Then there was a whole piece of that there's a time sensitive component to it where, you know, it will stay on and then come down as you know, throughout the evening. So, you know, at 3 a.m. if there's not any motion, you know, they go off. The panel's angled so the snow falls off. You know, so they were looking at that. Snowsbrook Road to the conference center was brought up as far as that's so dark that you know, that would be a possible, you know, people are walking from like the conference center to their hotels.
Like
and
the
stuff.
conference center down the hill to the Valley Trail.
I think Tom was talking about the snow, and maybe I miswrote it down, but Snowsbrook Road to the conference center, like that there's a dark
There's a,
piece,
Oh,
yeah.
there's a piece of it that's very dark.
These
It's
have
going
like
down Soy
the,
Village Road.
what she was looking at had like a 8 to 10 year warranty and a lifespan of 20 to 25 years. They were about $5,000 a piece, but the more you buy, you know, the cost comes down. So that was on the lighting. And then James Sununu brought up, because he had watched, I think it was a planning board video. And we were talking about the trail. And I think Mark might have, or maybe the trail around Corcoran's Pond, like that we
Right,
couldn't
Levitt Loop.
develop that.
Levis Loop.
Until, you know, because it was tied into what they're doing. And he said that is not the case, that there's an easement for the pond trail that you could start, it's not dependent on their development. So we could, you know, move forward with that. He also talked about there's a lot of grants out there. It's called Raise Grants that, you know, you can apply for. There's a lot of money out there to be able to help with the planning, not only the execution, but the planning piece of these type of projects to make it more affordable. The Snowsbrook Bridge, was it, there was, you know,
Village Trail.
Yeah, so they were talking about, there was a $250,000. Oh, the cost that was gonna, yeah, cost for that. But there's those grants out there that again would help, they're either matching or,
What's
it's
the
just-
250,000? I didn't follow
I
that.
know, I'm so sorry, I can't even read my own writings. I wrote down Snowsbrook Bridge, I don't know, Nancy, do you remember
Oh, sorry.
that at all?
And
We were talking about when James was bringing up the raise grants and, the Snowsbrook
The
Bridge.
one that was destroyed by,
That's what it was, maybe
Irene.
it was
Oh,
more.
the one like by the post office?
It was, did.
yeah, behind Snowy Owl.
Oh, yeah.
That they did get money for that? I apologize. I will come back to you with
Well,
an answer.
I think the history is that Irene destroyed it and
Destroyed
it
it.
cost
Okay.
too much to, we just couldn't rebuild it like it
Oh,
was.
okay.
Yeah, because you have to use it for 100 year storm.
Oh, I apologize. So people wanted, there used to be, that bridge across,
Mhm.
and he said it was like gonna cost like $250,000 because they had to redo the footings and.
Right, all the new
very
requirements, you
expensive.
just couldn't
So
put
Because it has to
like
be
that,
for a
that's
100-year
one-
storm.
Yeah,
pedestrian
that's
bridge,
what
it
my
wasn't
notes were.
working.
It's coming back to me now.
That was really interesting.
So something like that. So he was using that as an example that, that's cost prohibitive for, anybody to do, but potentially, there's grants out there, things like that, that might make something like that more affordable. That's what it was. So that is all I believe I had. Nancy, anything else you want to add in from our town core working group meeting? And that was on June 25th is when we met.
I've
And
got
please
a
correct me out there.
responses to the, from the select board standpoint. So the lighting, that has been purchased is gonna be put up in the transfer station. You notice that changes are being made to make it permanent. We got the okay, we got the permit from the state to go forward with the plan engineering plan we submitted. But
Down here.
yes, but the idea is that to see how those lights work. And then the first stop and seeing if there's someplace else we can use similar lights would be the bridge over the dam. So, and make those solar, and that would cut down, there's been complaints that they're too bright, even though we've stepped them down over the years.
They're terrible lights.
They're very bright, so that is in the works. We'll see how these pan out here, and if it seems like they work, we'll perhaps give them a shot down at the bridge over the dam. On the Levitt Loop, the big issue has been going across Snowsbrook and the cost of going across Snowsbrook.
Mhm.
I think that's the main thing that's slowed it up. I mean, you've got the trail there, right? I mean, if you've got the Pond Loop Trail,
All new trail does that.
it does, except you have to go out under the road,
Back over the road.
then, by the athletic center and then come back in. The idea of Levitt Loop was to shorten that and have it come around over the Snowsbrook entry into Corcoran Pond. Again, permitting, cost.
Do we have somebody as a town employee that part of their job is to look at the grants that are out there and
We
to
do not have
so that's
Particular person.
A grant writer.
a grant
a
writer.
grant writer or even just, so
No,
the
we do
grants that
not.
we do get, who's been the the person that's put in those applications?
I mean, I know for the Department of Public Safety side, Chief Noyes has
Always
done a
looking.
lot of,
He's
he's
Always
always
looking for it,
all-
right?
Yeah.
And
he's
and
fabulous.
town manager Mark Dakota is always looking for grants. I think several people, including myself, when we see these notices from the New Hampshire Association of Conservation Commissions, things like that, there are all sorts of grant opportunities, and we might flag it and say, hey, we should look into this. And actually, that was done and we got a $250,000 grant to help with our wastewater management system. I think it was from the North Country Council. Yeah, and that was simply, hey, look at this, they're looking for projects, and so
Have you
Mark
heard of the
put the-
RAISE program or like?
that doesn't strike a
Okay.
bell, but it's been a question that we've talked, I know the select board over the years have talked about hiring a person to be, a grant writer.
A good grant writer pays for themselves.
Right.
Well,
Well,
that's the point, but you have to
maybe.
get that beyond town meeting.
Right.
and
I'd say
the
that
cost.
the
Yeah.
town core working group had hired a grant writer for maybe 2 years.
Yeah.
Way back in the beginning,
Mhm.
and it just never, like, we got close, but never actually got any of the grants.
Yeah, it's like a certification, right? Like a grant writer, you can get a certification to be a grant writer.
Yeah, I mean,
It's like a
she
very
had gotten
niche
grants
thing.
at other places. It wasn't that she wasn't any good, it was that the grants were hard to get.
Yeah, especially for a town like our
Yeah.
town.
If one of the issues, terrible thing to say. One of the issues with our town. Is we are considered. Affluent.
Yeah.
You
There's
know,
nobody below the poverty.
I don't know any other way to say it, but you know, when you compare. The affluence, of our residents with. The rest of our surrounding towns. We kind of stand out.
Oh, for sure.
Well, our valuation's over $500 million.
I got, you know,
It's a lovely little town.
Yeah. For 700 residents.
for, you know, and it is, and. You know, we have people like Rich that, you know, throw the, that,
That's right. Well, but that's an issue across a whole series of grants and any.
no, I understand it, but it is,
There's no way.
it is an issue.
Right.
It is absolutely an issue.
And we do
Yeah.
try to deal with it. I mean, one of the things and one of the reasons why you see us moving the cost of operating water and wastewater onto onto a separate bill. It used to be paid via taxes because our rates were so low and still are very low that you go for a grant and they say, but your rates are so low. So why would we want to give you any money?
Yeah.
So I mean, there are little things like that you have to pay attention to as well. So the next time you see your water and sewer bill, that's part of it. We're moving it off. I think we pretty much moved everything we want to move off the tax rolls. Onto the separate water and wastewater sewage. So there are little things we can do to try to help, but you know, we're not getting any sympathy on our wastewater plant. You know, we're getting some money, but it's not like when they built the one now. I mean, I think that was fully funded, right? The wastewater plant we have now,
Yeah.
I think it was fully funded.
Really?
Cost 500,000 or something like that. And the new one, 50 years later, is gonna be 40 million something, and we may get about a third of state money to help with
Maybe.
that.
That's good.
Was
No, I
the
think we'll
Chevron activity change?
Yeah, actually, Mark and I talked about that, and it could be helpful.
You tell the EPA to take a hike.
Or at least we'll take them to court and we'll have a shot at winning, because up to now, the court has been the EPA. So say they set the standard, we have the strictest standard for one particular chemical in the nation. And we can't even find, and that $40 million, a huge chunk of that is trying to get that effluent, that chemical down to a certain level. And we can't even find a company that's willing to certify that they have the equipment that will reach that level.
At the
And we
very-
go to measure it, and we went to the EPA, and the EPA said,
Wait,
Oh.
tough,
so
that's
what-
our decision.
What do other places do?
When
They
no
don't
one's
have
in
the
the box, no one's kind of in the box we're in. They have a higher limit on this one particular,
What's the chemical, do you know?
I'm sorry?
What's the chemical, do you know?
Yes, I just forgot.
Crazy name.
Yeah, but you see, our issue is
I have to look it up. but I'll
because
let
it's
you
so
know.
close to a water source.
Oh, I see.
Well, we're the
Well,
first,
for the
we're the
first
first sewage plant on the Mad River.
Or on the Merrimack River watershed.
Right. And
Yeah.
so as you go further downstream, you're allowed to, because it builds up, right? So you can probably you can get more stuff. So they want people upstream to put in as little as possible. So by the time it ends up in the Atlantic Ocean, it's relatively clean.
So you're saying we could do that, we just can't measure it, and we're at a standstill because we can't. find
No,
it?
we have actually, the town has developed its own way of measuring it.
Trademark that.
And the problem too is that was a standard that was given to us in the previous permit. And there's no backsliding is how they look at it. We want to raise the standard. That's going the wrong direction, right? that you don't want to raise the standard of a pollutant.
Right.
You want to lower it at, it'd be the objective. So that we're asking to raise the standard because it's unreasonable. And so the EPA set the standard and we went to the EPA and they made the judgment that they like the standard they set. So Chevron, I think, does give us the ability to go to court and seek relief there if we wanted to pursue that, but that of
But
course
that might
costs
cost as much as
a lot of,
doing
may
it.
cost a lot of money to,
Just as much as.
Yeah,
of,
it
it-
would cost $1 million bucks. to
yeah.
court.
who knows what would result there.
Yeah,
So you,
Sky.
maybe the dark sky.
Dark sky, so.
I have a question on dark sky.
But she hasn't said anything yet.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, no, go ahead before I get into it.
well, you should present first.
It's not
That's
really
how- that's the
a
order.
presentation, it's just that, in working with my condo complex and in all the discussions we've had. One thing that recently came up is that in our ordinance, it says that if it is under 1,800 lumens, basically you don't have to comply. And so that's basically every regular light bulb. So how do we square that?
Change the ordinance.
Exactly,
Well,
so that's
but
something to look
That one isn't
into.
an ordinance, that's a condo association regulation.
There's 1,800 lumens in our ordinance, and so my condo association said, we don't have to comply because we're not over that.
None of the other restrictions on lighting in our ordinance modifies that, is it?
No, and I reached out to Chief Noise, I mean, I have him a million times, I feel. But he said the spirit of the ordinance is not that, obviously, we want everybody to be good neighbors and comply and conserve the dark sky.
But we should change the rule.
Right, I think we need to change that
We could, but it'd be
When-
grandfathered.
Can we,
until they change the fixture, right?
Right.
Okay,
when they're changing the fixture, it gets into grandfathering, et cetera. But
So we gotta get.
one
in
of
there
the
now.
issues that I have, and I've had discussions with the developers around us, is that the garage lights are not motion sensitive, they just go on and stay on.
Wait, whose garage lights? What are you talking about?
For example, the other 20.
right, like they're on a timer and they turn on at like 6
No,
PM.
yeah. But
Or
they
is it
go
like
on, they
this?
stay on unless they turn them off
In your
in our
development?
unit, in our area.
Okay,
Ours are all motion sensitive, our three are motion sensitive. Theirs aren't,
so they're just on?
they're just on.
That's
For
what
example,
happens
if you
at
drive,
Sunnyside.
if you
All
drive
All those
by,
places that are empty?
if you drive by the unit next to us. Alright. They let some of their teenage kids come over and do whatever for a weekend at the end of college thing. And they put a light on the balcony next to us. That light has been on for 3 weeks.
Mhm.
If you drive by, you'll see it.
Yeah, the same thing happened at my condo complex.
Right, so I mean, I don't know, I mean, that is.
I mean, I asked my neighbor to turn it off and she did, but it's a different scenario. They're leaving the light on so that these kids have a light, or they're leaving it on because they forgot.
They forgot.
Okay,
Or
I think
whatever.
all you can do is contact the
Yeah.
owner and
Yeah.
ask them to,
so I think that there
as
are,
we've done.
yeah, a few,
We have a
Well,
problem like that
Hmm.
with one of our neighbors.
but the porch light, it
Probably
shouldn't
you.
be a problem that it's on. It's a problem that
It's there.
it's not dark sky compliant.
right,
Because if it were, it wouldn't bother you.
yep, there would be no light trespass.
Yeah, so that's the issue.
Yeah. To use my condo complex as an example, because we're looking at this right now, is we have lights that on the sheet that Chief Noise sends out as to what's like an acceptable light fixture and what's not. Ours fall under not. They're not acceptable. We should not have them because they go in all directions. Also, all the light bulbs are different, so some people are using LED, some are not. So they're all different light brightness and color. So maybe we could put something with like uniformity of bulbs in an amendment if we do that, or
Mhm.
because right now we are totally out of compliance, but technically we're not, because we're under 1800 lumens. And then Chief Noyes has said they don't have an actual way to measure it.
Right,
That's
that's
the point I wanted to raise. We need a means of measuring. Because if you're gonna make any compliance regulations stick, you need to have a
Right.
measurement.
Yeah, when we had talked about this before, we talked about making regulations about the light sources, the bulbs, because we don't have a tool that's gonna measure the lumens at a particular place. Although I wish we did, because then you could say, yes, your light's shining over here too much or not too much.
Yeah.
And so I'm surprised there's nothing that measures that.
One thing else I would say is like flag code, if you're leaving your flag outside, it has to be illuminated. That does not comply with dark sky because it would then be pointing upward. So is that something we need? I'm looking at you because I don't know.
Yeah, well, you take the flag down.
Mhm.
not
They
gonna
shouldn't be left up overnight anyway,
Yeah,
should they?
it-
mold.
Yeah,
As long as it's
it's like.
I just meant well.
Respect
Oh,
the
as long as
flag.
it's lighted, I guess.
Yes.
Can I maybe make it, so
You have to have the light
Kathy had
shining down.
given
not up.
me the name of this woman,
Yes.
Melissa Regazio. She is not a dark sky expert per se, but she has gone to conferences and actually she told me the other day in an email that she spoke to this probably the same people we were trying to talk to in Colorado.
Yeah.
So I have a meeting, a phone call with her on Monday. Anybody is welcome to join if you'd like. I can set it up as a Zoom call or whatever.
It won't be in town, but
I
that,
think it would be maybe just a quick meeting to talk about whether or not it's worth her coming to talk to us. And sharing a little bit about, I think where she might be able to help is the resources that are available to communities that have this same sort of quandary, I guess. And so I guess my thought is when I talk to her Monday, I'll just ask her how she feels like she could help us and talk a little bit about what some of our challenges are.
Mhm.
I think I appreciate most of what we've talked about historically in here and also have my own opinions about some of these things. And I'll get her
would love to hear.
perspective on whether or not, what's that?
I would love to hear your opinions.
Yeah, we have far too much light in this valley and it's getting worse, but not better. And so there's a lot of factors that go into that, including new development or whatever else. So if it makes sense for her to come and talk to this board, or a smaller committee, I guess that's what I want to know is what, like, do you guys all want to hear from her?
I do it to the dark skies group,
Working group thing.
yeah, you guys,
Okay,
yeah, listen to it. and
who's,
Let us know.
I forget who's on, who is all
I mean.
And grandfather, biggest issue, the
Mike
biggest
Bill.
issue
we're
that
gonna-
we have in getting things resolved is grandfather.
That's, I think, the general resolution. We want something done about this. It's just a question of how much do we want to push this ahead? Change the ordinance.
Right, if she can
Yeah.
offer us help. And if she's willing to do it for free, that would be fabulous.
Yeah,
And-
that's what I'll find out too
Yeah,
on Monday.
And we also have Tara who can help us craft things.
I think at the end of the day, what's probably gonna be nice about this call and what we'll find out is that she's learned an awful lot. She's not really in that business. She could probably steer us towards some resources that are
Yeah.
available to us to help us sort of either craft up a change to the ordinance
Mhm.
or how, communities have gone about convincing their constituents or whatever to think about different ways of lighting the areas that they want lit up at night.
And I've had a million thoughts, obviously, I think we all have on certain things, but like. The motion sensor, I think in solar lighting is great, because then it pops on and you'll know if the bear's there because it will also pick up the bear, right? And I think that's what a lot of people are worried about, and with the age-friendly community, people who have failing eyesight, they're gonna want more light, and I get that. But at the same time, we can do, like the AARP thing, we can become a dark sky community with a certificate. Which is time and effort and money. So
Oh.
there are things we can do, and you could partner with the Race Center to use the observatory to look at the dark sky on certain nights, or you could have the International Dark Sky Committee does. I think it's in April, where towns turn off all of their lights and you really look at the sky and see how dark it is and on a full moon and things like that. So there's all sorts of community outreach we could do, but again, time, effort, money.
You know, we were talking, I think it's education as well, so the people that left their light on and
You saw it, I'm sure you've
you know,
seen it.
I saw that one. And-
It's fun,
So-
it's funny, except it's not.
Right.
Yeah, no, there's people who leave their lights on all the time, but, you know, we were talking about this a couple of meetings ago, and
They're not
Tim
there.
heard me complain about the lights that were up on the mountain, and they were off the next day, and so it really is also about, hey, people, you know, it's really cool sky here when we don't have that much lighting.
That's why you can
Turn
see
your
Milky
light-
Way.
You don't need every light on in your house right now, that's an indoor thing, we have no control over that, people can turn on every light in their house, but it does have an effect on the
Maybe
quality of
people
life
come
here in the
back.
valley, so.
Tara, do you have any thoughts?
Yeah, I just wanted, for the newer members may not be aware that I wrote the amended version that you have. And it's based on, like most towns, it's based on an older model that's easier to implement. Like Nancy said, it doesn't require a light meter, but you look at the fixture and whatnot when it's installed, when it has a permit. The Dark Skies Society's model that they adopted with lighting engineers is way too complex for a town like Waterville Valley. I think what you have is a good model. If you want to look at tweaks to it, I think that's the way to go. We generally use a number like 1800 lumens because that's kind of the brightest bulb that you're going to put in your outside light by your garage or by your entry. And the desire of the planning board at that time was to focus on commercial lighting and how your floodlight is aimed, and to kind of stay away from regulating the bulb that somebody puts in their front porch light. So you want to kind of think about what you're going to capture if you lower that limit. 1600 is about what we used to call a 100-watt bulb. So you want to look at things like that and think about enforcement. If your neighbor puts in, if you load it, say to 16 and your neighbor puts in one that's 18, is your expectation that Dave is going to go find them? Or, you know, I think you really want to talk about the political will for enforcement before you broaden what you're capturing with that ordinance.
I mean, I know we always want the opportunity to be more restrictive than the average in many cases, and I think if the goal back then was to reduce like spotlights and bright lights that are causing a lot of light trespass in commercial properties, I think for the most part, Black Bear and some places excluded, we've reached that goal. Like, we don't have a lot of spotlights anywhere. We've got lights that shine on signs and we have street lights that adhere to that. So I think that goal has largely been met. Anybody else think differently?
What I've been hearing you guys discuss is some of the grandfathered lighting and how to work with landowners to bring those up to speed. And to me, as a planner, that would sound, from what I'm hearing, to make more sense as a next step rather than making it even stricter and then you have even more grandfathered non-conforming lighting.
Right, so
So-
what do you suggest? Rather than going more restrictive, just focus on.
I was pleased to hear an effort to work with landowners to bring some of the non-conforming lighting into compliance.
But how?
Cost.
I mean,
Yeah,
would
so-
we-
Well, that
would
was
we-
the charge of the
Like,
working group, right, was to figure out those things. These are other tasks. I mean, I don't know if you want Dark Skies Working Group to expand its remit to include tweaking the zoning with regard to dark skies and making recommendations with regard to enforcement, which would be a select board function. So those would be two other things you could consider, but as I understood it, the Dark Skies Working Group was put together to see what they can do to, help landowners achieve the current zoning standards we have for dark skies. So you're talking about a bigger task here,
Yes.
adding a couple things.
Right, the planning board would need to vote to broaden the task for the working group.
Okay.
And I also have a question, Tara. Is it typical for towns in New Hampshire to have their lighting ordinance as part of the zoning ordinance as opposed to, say, a select board ordinance?
Yeah, I don't think it's a really empower, it's not a select board authority. It's gonna be in the zoning, or if you didn't want it to apply to single family homes at all, it would be in the site plan regulations.
So it'd be based in it, but I'm trying to understand, like, for example, in noise, we have a noise select board ordinance, but we don't have anything about noise in our zoning.
And
So
that's,
it's the other way around.
and that's because of where it lives in the RSA's.
Okay,
There's a specific statute that says a town can have a noise ordinance.
okay, so that answered my question. So typically, this is dealt with in zoning, as far as dark skies or lighting is concerned.
Yes.
Okay,
Or it's common to have it in site plan regulations and not apply it to residential property.
okay. Thank you.
Except multifamily. But it's definitely a land use authority, not select board.
Right. So there's really no way to get around the grandfathering except education, talking to people.
Well,
Unless, unless you bring in nuisance law, right?
Well, yeah.
I'm all
I didn't
about
want to say that, but that you kind of read my mind.
I mean,
Right.
if I had a close neighbor and shined my floodlight right into their windows, then there's a nuisance issue there.
Which does exist in RSA. That's an RSA,
Right.
right? A state law.
So, just made me think.
I don't want to give you any ideas, but she said.
Clearly, I'm going off on this. This is my thing.
I was complaining about, someone had some holiday lighting in a tree that next to the golf course. That was just on a timer and it's been going off for months and months after the holidays. And without anybody even at the property, it was just coming on. At some point, they did turn it off, but while I was complaining about that, I'm very good at that complaining bit. Someone mentioned to me
You're
that
the enforcement officer.
there's been additional, I think maybe I was complaining to Rich. He told me to go talk to the right person. In any case, I think I heard that there's a plan, so all the lighting that goes around sort of the field. The training field for cross-country skiing or whatever else. That there's additional lighting plan similar to that, like a much bigger plan. I forget who's running that, if it's the foundation or.
You mean for this coming
Yeah, this coming
season?
season.
Yes, we're bringing back, or the idea is to bring back the winter lights. And it's gonna be more professional. I don't know if it's gonna be bigger. Just more professional. It's gonna be taken out of, I think it is it's the Resort Association, the town. And I'm struggling to remember if the foundation is involved. I don't
Okay,
think
I
so.
said foundation, but I don't know.
At least the Resort Association is. Yes, and the town and the resort. We're combining to bring back. Some version, a more professional version. Of those winter
Holiday
lights,
lighting.
holiday lighting, but remember, that is exempted from seasonal lighting. is already-
No, not, that had site plan approval.
Right, now they had to go through a process.
So
No, no.
if there was a big expansion, they need to come back in to
Yes,
amend their site
that's-
plan.
That is correct, and I think in a year or two ago, we asked for that because there was a major change.
Okay,
And I think we granted it.
But
Yeah.
I'm not aware of any major
Well,
change.
like last year, they went around over by the Bull Hill gazebo.
Right,
And up was that part of the site plan approval or addition or whatever you wanna call it?
yeah, I don't remember when that came in, to tell you the truth.
Like, I feel, I just, so knowing that there's an approval process in place, that sounds good to me. But that, if there's anything in this valley, particularly when there's snow on the ground, that changes the dynamic around dark sky, that's a huge one.
Mhm.
And if we're gonna leave it up for 4 or 5 months, like.
Well,
something to think about.
no, I hear, and we've had this discussion, I mean, we're balancing interests here, right? You have the businesses who want to make Waterville Valley look like a welcoming place, you know, and on a winter evening, so people get out and about, and you want to make it look like a resort, and then you have the public safety department, you know, and their safety concerns about lighting around town, make sure that the, you know, the roads and somewhat are lit, and then we have our dark skies compliant issue, and it's been very difficult for us to
Square.
square that circle. I know it can be done, right? I mean, but
Yeah.
it's expensive and difficult. We've not gotten there, so.
I think that's the roadblock that the committee has found is the cost and finding someone who is able to do this locally.
Right, and then getting the town buy-in, I mean, to spend the money and to make it happen, to have a plan to make even make the winter lighting, you know, at least as much as possible.
Keeps coming back to the word expensive.
Yes, because every time we had a conversation particularly with commercial owners, said, fine, we'd be willing to comply. You pay for the changes.
Sure.
And it's still there. That's the position we're in.
Yeah, I feel like we have less control over that, and then as this stuff gets built out. At the very least, maybe that's where the opportunity is. We don't make it any
Well,
worse than it is now.
Yeah.
I mean, when they're building, I mean, they'll have to, you know, as Tara pointed out, through site plan review, they'll have to, you know, conform to our zoning regulation. But the other part of it is that we've grown as a town. You know, on a winter evening here, you can see the glow of Waterville Valley because there are a couple, 2,000-3,000 people here.
But-
And how are you gonna, and those are just, and that's not just commercial, but that's all the houses, all, you know, lit up inside.
Well, it's outside too. I guess the new development, the aesthetic is to put cool lighting on the outside of, you know, these 7,000.
And it has to apply to, it has to
So, yeah. so
comply, excuse me.
7,000, well, we do have
What-
7,000.
Sorry.
We do.
Keep on.
There's at least one for
Jumping
sale
ahead,
right now, I
just-
think.
Just
But
jump in there.
Well,
That's
so,
an
but
older
my,
one.
my question is, to your point then, is there ordinances that we can maybe, and Tara can help us tighten up for future development? And I know, again, you know, you don't want to be too restrict, you know, but what can we control? And if we, as an appetite in a community, want to change, put forward an ordinance to make it even more restrictive or for future development, I don't know, like, I don't really know that much about
Well, that
it,
gets
but-
to the other task. Do we want to charge the Dark Skies Working Group with, is to take a look at tweaking, as Tara put it, the current Dark Skies
ordinance.
zoning.
Yes.
we
Yeah,
have.
expand our.
Yeah,
And there is one element that could be explored, and that's the lighting is also measured by the absolute temperature scale called Kelvin. And that Kelvin takes into consideration color as well as intensity. And it's a measure that has been, say, accepted in the quote lighting community. That is, a higher Kelvin is closer to bright blue, lower Kelvin is closer to yellow, even brown. And
You have that.
We do, yep, it's in.
I
it's
thought
in
you
there.
had that. It's, you have 3,000 or less.
right. But we need to have a means of measurement. My other problem with our ordinance is the lack of measurement. That is, we need to decide to invest in a measurement device to either measure lumen or Kelvin, and to put it into the hands of the compliance officer so that he can make a site visit and produce a meaningful evaluation. Say, these are the numbers, they either comply or they don't comply. And as a means by which we can have leverage in the conversation with the non-compliant property.
But
So,
if you look at the manufacturer's information on the item, there's no need to go measure. That's why it's written this way.
Right. But when when the compliance officer is on site and he says, what you've done doesn't comply. And the property owner says, I think we comply perfectly well, and we have no reason to change.
Or it
Here's,
doesn't apply.
they can
or-
check the appliance.
doesn't,
I
yeah.
think that's what Tara is saying.
Okay, I understand that. It would be, in my opinion, effective to be able to measure and say, here's the measurement. It's either complies or it doesn't comply, which would advance the discussion with the property owner immeasurably.
It's
Yeah, I
not
don't
just,
agree. I think if they buy something that the manufacturer says complies, I don't think they should be subject to a fine. I think they should be able to rely on the manufacturer's information.
Who's got
If
the
there's a
burden?
question about it, then ask them to provide the, the spec sheet on the.
Yeah, and
I don't think that's always been available in these discussions.
so
Well,
there's no,
okay.
what you're asking for is proactive enforcement. And we just don't have the staff to do that. It's not just a question of a device that we can give the code enforcement officer. Or this is a code enforcement issue. Really, it's not a public safety issue. And we tend in our minds to kind of meld them together, right? If there's
Yeah.
noise, who do you call? Well, you call the policeman on duty, right? But he's really, that's really a code enforcement, right, issue. So, I mean, we've looked at this any number of times on the select board and in previous planning boards. And we'd have to hire a person whose job it would be to do something like that.
Just be the code enforcement officer.
Well, that's the whole other question, because our code enforcement officer is more than just the code enforcement.
Oh, he's the director.
Right, so, and that's been a perennial issue, trying to, do we want to, we may have to, as we expand, have a code enforcement office as part of public safety, which is staffed by two people. But that's been the roadblock in terms of compliance.
And it's
Agree.
not done during the workday. It would have to be done at night to see where the light trespass is.
Right, and right now you're depending on the officer on duty to handle any number of other issues, and then once you get I mean, you guys all know the deal, then you get a call and, for an ambulance and off you go, you
Yeah.
know, and in terms, so it would require more than a device, is what I'm saying, so that's
Yeah.
why.
Yeah, all I'm trying to is express the frustration that the working group has in trying to
Yeah.
make progress. So, all these roadblocks, if we could say, oh, okay, so,
But no, that's why I think that's why Tara constructed the zoning on this as she did, where it's device or appliance related, right?
Right. And you're way too small to have a professional code enforcement officer, and if you did decide to do that and buy equipment like light meters and whatnot and provide the training, you would have a really hard time finding one.
Yeah, we actually did go down the route a number of years ago in select board to see if we could find someone who could be like a separate building inspector / code enforcement officer. We couldn't find anybody.
Right, all the towns I work with have a really hard time with that. A lot try using a part-time one, and what they find is somebody with no official certification to be code enforcement, but somebody who knows a lot of building stuff.
Yeah.
And then they move on or retire, and it ends up back in the select board's hands in most of my towns. So, or there's no enforcement.
Is there a possibility to just, at minimum, do some dark sky education? And by that, I mean, most of us don't know what lumens means in terms of wattage, but there is a way to convert wattage to lumens. And we could start by educating people in terms of what should the wattage on your outside lights be at maximum. And the next time you replace, please consider stepping down. That kind of thing. Is there
Right.
something we can do in that area?
When we
Good idea.
first started this venture, I went to the International Dark Skies website, requested brochures. So I have 3 different brochures and like 50 each, I think, that I can put at the post office if that's something we're able to
You
do.
could potentially put it in the trash, sewer and water as a,
Mhm. Just
Yeah, like
another
those your,
thing.
just as
doesn't
a,
comply.
I mean, you could, if, you could even take that brochure perhaps and put it on the town website
Website
and
as
do a
well.
link
yeah.
from the water sewer bill to go look at how can you help with dark skies.
Right.
Yeah, I think the education
sounds
piece
great.
is gonna be important.
Mhm.
Alright, so we have some things to think
Yeah.
about with dark sky.
I mean, you could ask
Yeah.
people that, you know, when they leave, please remember to turn off all your lights outdoor lights, or would you consider putting your lights on some sort of motion or
Motion
motion sensor?
motion sensor, and you know, I hate to present this, they're cheap,
Yeah,
alright?
you can just add them to like a fixture, that doesn't have to be a whole new fixture.
Yeah, you just
Right,
screw 'em in, right? In
it's,
between. That's what I did for my garage light inside.
that's what I did on the side of my
Yeah.
garage for the walkway.
You know, we could also ask people to just walk the perimeter of their property at night, and the part about not being able to see directly into any of their lights from, you know, the outside, right outside of their property, because that's what annoys neighbors.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, I mean,
Alright.
that's something we could ask people to do.
So our town council, when he came here, did not like the idea of wigwag articles about the amendments that we were proposing. Is this something I could do? If we all agree, I could write an article for the wigwag about
Not an
it.
amendment, it's just
Well, just,
advice on, hey, we're
Mhm.
dark skies compliant, we have zoning, and here are some things you
this is the
should
current
think about,
state.
yeah.
And
Yeah,
what-
we don't
what
have to
things
get
you
into
could
the
do
amendment
to-
business.
You're not asking them to vote on anything, you just,
I mean, also I could just do it as a regular citizen.
yeah,
but-
no, absolutely.
So it's advocacy. We want you to think about this.
Okay. Is that something that everybody thinks I should do?
do we take a vote on that, Tara?
No,
I mean, whether, no, we don't
You're
vote.
not doing this as a planning board person,
That's what I'm talking about
you're doing
doing.
this as an individual.
I
so-
could, it's either or, that's what we're talking
But
about.
she really is a representative of the Dark Sky Committee of the planning
Yeah,
board.
why not?
I don't understand why she
Yeah,
couldn't.
gonna identify
write it.
herself.
You're not advocating for
If we vote to
an
It's
amendment,
informational.
it's just.
You could vote to have her write it and run it by the chair, or
Yeah,
you know, vote like that of how it gets approved.
yeah,
Okay,
All right.
Alan,
Yeah.
I don't know what the turnover is for selling houses, but could we write whatever you call it, that anytime there's a change of ownership, they have to become compliant?
Ooh,
No.
that's a good one.
No,
we have a grandfathering, you're still stuck with the
Well, my
grandfather.
point is, a change of ownership would
Loses.
eliminate the grandfather clause.
no, it wouldn't. You can't do that.
Darn, that's a
well.
great idea.
I mean, otherwise, if you had, say you had a variant or special exception for a certain business and you built the business, you would never be able to sell it. So that's just not how land use law works.
Okay,
I was really thinking of residences, but okay.
But that, I mean, that's the concept that land use approvals are forever.
Yes. So do we want to take a vote on asking or directing Morgan to write a article about giving people tips on being dark sky compliant, if I can put it that way?
Hey, Terry, do
have-
we need to take a vote to see if 2/3 of us want to take a vote, or can we just vote on it?
You could just vote on it.
Okay,
Yeah.
I mean, you'd
And-
have a motion and a second and then vote, right?
yeah, and then have that, and have the chair be the, approve it, so it doesn't have to go back to the whole board.
Or, I mean, have Nancy approve it as a chair pro tem because she's there.
Send it to
Yeah, by
but-
the time-
It sounds like Rich made a motion.
Bill's a
Yes.
good editor. So he does.
That's,
What was your motion?
He's in your.
That
Yes, we always
that
send
the
it to
planning
Bill.
board direct Morgan
Madam
to
Chair.
write an article for the wigwag that would discuss dark skies compliance and provide the reader with some tips to how to achieve that,
Recommendations, yeah.
recommendations.
Sounds like a good motion to me. I second it.
Thank you.
All right, all in favor? All opposed? Okay, the motion passes.
Oh, and that it would be approved by the,
Oh, yeah.
by the chair
As
of
amended.
publication.
As
As amended, approved by the chair for publication. Well, you may be able to make the deadline for,
Doubtful, I'm headed out.
oh, okay, so the September wigwag then.
Yeah, you gotta like,
Hey,
okay,
it's a step forward.
I
Yes.
think this will be more, education would be more effective than any additional.
It would.
Yeah, I
be,
think
yeah.
people would.
Most definitely.
yeah. Are there any other committee reports? Anybody, Conservation Committee or anybody else meet? Nope. All right, calendar review, second Thursday of next month is our next meeting. I don't think we have any special meetings scheduled.
No,
yet.
I think you have the assessor coming in August.
When is our August meeting?
8th.
The eighth?
Yeah.
Good, I'm
8 and
still
8.
here.
I will not be here.
I won't be here.
8 a.m. Okay.
Yes, Assessor, and we were gonna talk about, start the discussion about zoning amendments. Tara, was that the plan still?
Yeah, I mean, we'll have to see what else you end up with. You have the assessor, you have two things from the town core working group to revisit.
Okay,
Wasn't there one?
yeah, I just depend on you for the schedule, cause you know, we don't wanna be,
And the noise, the issue to respond to the select board on the noise letter, I guess, was put off to that. month
August,
too.
yes, that's
Yeah.
correct.
The
But
11th.
I'm on the zoning and we'll be ready when you are.
Okay,
Yeah, so I guess I'd encourage people, if the pickleball courts get finished, to pay attention for next meeting.
it's very close.
Yeah.
I think they'll
Yeah,
be open
fast.
soon.
So,
Speaking of I have a question on that,
Is it a planning board question, Mike?
sort of.
well, if it's not planning board. you
Well, I
want
think
to
it is
go
a
after?
planning board question.
Okay,
When,
As an offer to.
when the,
talk to-
when the,
thank you.
after
when the discussion of the planning board of the pickleball courts went in, certain representations were made regarding fencing. If those things, huh?
Yeah.
Mhm.
We're listening.
Alright, so for example, it said that there's gonna be 8-foot fence on 3 sides and a 4-foot fence on the
There
other.
were a number of things, and we have it all on paper. Yeah,
If that does not happen, do we have any recourse?
The select board, the select board enforces the conditions on a site plan and it's all laid out in the notice of decision.
yeah, I mean, we had a pretty extensive, I think it was a 2-page, was it, Tara, a 2-page list
I don't know, but I mean, we,
involved.
Yep.
So, yeah, you
well,
get a
it's all
copy,
there.
it's there, and then if there's something that does not meet the conditions, then. No, you gotta be official, bring it to the select board as an enforcement issue.
I gotta talk to Craig. first
Well,
before I-
sure, you could try that, Pat, first, see if
I
you
mean,
can
you know,
resolve it
Just
Yeah.
because.
without bringing the law down on his head.
Right,
That would be neighborly.
okay,
Okay,
I'll talk to Craig first.
any other business before we adjourn? Okay, well, do I hear a motion to adjourn?
I move we adjourn this meeting.
A second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
All
Thank you,
opposed?
Sarah.
All right.
Where is that list?
It's in our record, planning board records, it should be a. We should have it. What is it that you think he's not?
If you look at the